Amara heard it before she saw it. A sound that didn't belong. Low, strained. Something being dragged or someone dragging themselves. She had worked the 44th floor of Kang Tower for 4 years. She knew every sound this building made and every sound it wasn't supposed to. The ventilation on 22. The water pressure drop on 31. The specific silence of a corridor that should be empty at 11:40 p.m. This was not that silence. She stopped her cart. The service exit at the far end of the corridor was cracked open. The one that led to the back stairwell. The one that opened to the alley. The one with the sign that read authorized personnel only, which always struck her as quietly funny because the only people who ever used it were delivery drivers propping it open with a brick to smoke. No brick tonight. The door was being held open from the other side. A hand, gripping the frame, knuckles white. Amara didn't freeze. She didn't call out. She walked toward it the way her mother taught her to walk toward anything frightening, chin level, eyes open, feet already decided. She pushed the door. He was on the ground against the dumpster, one hand pressed into his ribs, the other keeping him upright against the wall. His shirt was dark on the left side, the specific dark that isn't shadow. The suit alone cost more than her monthly rent. She didn't need to know brands to know that. She'd cleaned enough executive floors to recognize quality that stopped needing to perform itself. His eyes found hers immediately. Not desperate, not afraid, calculating. Still calculating, even now, even here, even bleeding on concrete in an alley at midnight. He was measuring her, how long she'd stay, whether she'd run, what she was going to do. She crossed her arms. "Don't," he said. "Don't call anyone." "I wasn't reaching for my phone." "You were thinking about it. You're bleeding through your fingers." "I'm aware. That's not a small amount of blood." "Also aware." She looked at his side, looked at his face, looked at the way he was holding his jaw like the pain was something he could simply refuse to acknowledge if he held it tight enough. She went back to her cart. He watched her go. She could feel it. She came back with the first aid kit she bought herself 3 months ago, the one management never replaced because the requisition had been sitting in someone's inbox since before she stopped believing it would be approved. She knelt on the concrete beside him without asking. "This is going to hurt," she said. "Most things do." She pressed the gauze in. He didn't flinch, not a single muscle. He watched her hands with the focused attention of someone memorizing a process, not receiving care. Like he was filing it away so he would never need to be in this position again. She noticed. "You work in the building," he said, not a question. 44th floor, every night. 4 years. She looked up. "How did you?" "You know exactly what you're doing. That's experience, not training." She went back to work. She started tearing strips from the extra uniform she kept in her cart, the one she carried, because management took 3 months to replace anything, and she had long since stopped waiting. "You're destroying your uniform," he said. "I see that. I'll replace it." "You don't have to." "I know." She wrapped, tied off, tested the pressure with 2 fingers, nodded to herself. "You need a doctor tonight," she said. "Not tomorrow, tonight." "Tonight." "I mean that." "I know you mean it." "Then say it like you're going to do it." Something shifted in his face, almost imperceptible, like a window opening 1 inch in a wall that didn't have windows. "I'll see a doctor tonight," he said, with the careful precision of someone who doesn't repeat himself and wants her to understand this is the one time. She started gathering the used gauze. She didn't hover. She didn't wait for a thank you. She had 3 more floors and a bus to catch. "Your name," he said. She paused. "Why?" "Because you stayed." "That's not usually why people ask." "It's why I'm asking." She looked at him one long moment. "Amara." He nodded once, like it had been confirmed, like something had been entered somewhere that didn't close. "Go finish your floors, Amara." She stood, she went. She didn't look back. "Queens, if you are new here, You just walked into exactly the right place at exactly the right moment. I need to know where you're watching this from. Drop your city in the comments right now, because I genuinely want to know who is in this with me tonight. Subscribe before this story goes any further, because what happens to Amara by morning is going to make your blood boil, and you need to be here when it does. Welcome. You belong here. She didn't think about him on the 46th floor. She thought about Zoe, about whether her daughter had finished her homework, about the school shoes that were getting too small, about the parent-teacher meeting next Thursday she'd already rescheduled twice because her schedule didn't bend. She clocked out at 2:03 a.m., took the bus, let herself in quietly, checked on Zoe, one arm off the bed, mouth open, dreaming hard about something that made her smile in her sleep. Amara fixed the arm, pulled the blanket, set her alarm for 8. She was back at the tower by 8:47. She saw Harmon before she reached the security desk. That was the first wrong thing. Harmon didn't arrive until 9:15. She'd worked under this man for 4 years. She knew his schedule the way she knew everything in this building, not because she was paid to, but because patterns were safety, and she'd long understood that the people with the least leverage needed to understand the rhythms of the people with the most. He was early. Arms crossed. 2 security guards on either side of him. And the HR woman, the one Amara had spoken to exactly twice in 4 years, once when she was hired, and once when a complaint she'd witnessed was quietly buried, standing to his right with a folder. The folder had Amara's name on it. Pre-typed, she could read it from 10 feet away. Her thermos stopped halfway to her mouth. Amara. The way Harmon said it landed like a gavel. Mr. Harmon, she kept her voice flat, careful. We have a problem from last night. I worked my shift. You did. He paused with the specific performance of reluctance, a man who'd rehearsed this and wanted it to look unrehearsed. A Montblanc pen, limited edition, $3,000, went missing from the 44th floor executive lounge. Security footage shows you were the last person in that room. She set the thermos on the desk. I clean that room every night. We know. Every person in this building knows that. Which is why it concerned us when a search of your cart turned up the missing item. You search my cart. Standard. Was that authorized by someone above you, or did you decide to search my property on your own? Harmon's jaw tightened. The item was found, that's the issue. The issue, she said, and her voice dropped because she had learned that low carried further than loud in a quiet room, is that I didn't take it. The evidence is a pen in a cart that 60 people walk past every shift, in a building where cleaning staff are told they don't need to lock their equipment because management trusts us. She looked at him straight, didn't blink. Someone put it there. That's a very serious accusation. Yes, she said, it is, so is firing someone for theft they didn't commit. Silence spread through the lobby. The 2 staff near the elevator had stopped pretending to look elsewhere. Harmon opened the folder. Effective immediately, your employment is suspended pending review. He reached for her badge. She pulled back. Don't. Amara. I have worked in this building for 4 years. Her voice was still level, still quiet, the kind of quiet that takes more control than screaming. I have never been late. I found a wallet on the 39th floor with $800 in it and I turned it into your front desk. You were standing there. You watched me hand it over. Harmon didn't respond. That silence, right there, where a decent man would have said I know, told her everything she needed to know about what this was. Who told you to do this? She said. Security will walk you out. Who gave you the order? Thank you for your time with the organization. Don't you dare. The guards moved to her sides, not grabbing, just present. The suffocating presence of men whose job in this moment was to make her feel like the conversation was over. She picked up her bag, her thermos, her daughter's school schedule that she'd tucked in her pocket to look at on the bus. She walked. She counted the tiles. She didn't know why she counted, she just needed something to hold. 4 years. The ventilation on 22, she reported. The water pressure on 31, she flagged twice. The marble on this very floor she learned to clean correctly because no one trained her, and she figured it out herself, and then was written up by Harmon for the 3 weeks it took her to figure it out. She gave this building everything she had. 6 steps from the revolving door. The elevator opened. She recognized the shoes first. Black, perfectly made. The kind of quality that doesn't announce itself because it doesn't need to. Then the suit. Then the face. Jun Woo Kang moved through the lobby the way pressure systems move, everything rearranging around him before he asked it to. 2 men behind him, expression neutral, eyes already working. They swept the lobby the way eyes sweep a room when they've been trained to read one in under 5 seconds. They found Harmon. Found the folder. Found the guards at her sides. Found her badge, missing from her collar. Found the revolving door 10 steps ahead of her. He read every piece of it. She watched him do it. Watched something happen in his face, not visible unless you were looking very closely. A temperature drop. Internal. Controlled. He started walking. The lobby moved for him. Amara. The same way he said it in the alley. Like confirmation. Like something verified. The guards stepped back. Nobody told them to. They just did. Mr. Kang. Harmon's voice came out wrong. Too high. This is a personnel matter. An item was reported missing and found in this employee's. What item? A pen. Mont Blanc. Executive lounge on 44. My floor. Yes, sir. My lounge. Yes. Jun Woo looked at him. Nothing aggressive in it. Nothing that needed to be loud. The specific quality of attention that made people reassess every decision that had led them to this moment. A pen from my lounge, found in the cart of the woman who cleans my lounge. And your conclusion, he paused one beat, was theft. The evidence clearly. Who authorized the cart search? I did, under Section 12. Section 12 requires documented cause prior to the search. What was the documented cause? Harmon's mouth opened, closed. There was a report of a missing. Filed by who? Silence. Harmon, filed by who? I filed it. You reported the item missing. Yes. Then authorized a search of the equipment belonging to the employee you had already named in the report. The HR woman had drifted sideways. 2 small steps. The unconscious social distance of a person who has realized they don't want to be standing next to someone when a ceiling comes down. I followed the protocol. You followed a sequence you built. Jun Woo's voice didn't rise, it sharpened. You filed the report, you authorized the search, you had that document. His eyes moved to the folder, to the pre-typed name on the tab. Prepared before 9 a.m., she was called in at 9. The termination was written before the conversation happened. Sir, I can assure you. That's not protocol, Jun Woo said. That's a setup. The word landed in the lobby and stayed there. Nobody spoke. Amara was looking at Jun Woo, working very hard to keep her expression where she'd put it. But something was happening behind her eyes that she couldn't fully control, not relief, not gratitude. Something rower than both. The specific feeling of watching someone say out loud what you knew was true, but weren't sure anyone with power would ever acknowledge. I don't know what he told you, she said quietly. To Jun Woo, only to Jun Woo. He didn't tell me anything. I walked in. You saw all of that in 30 seconds. I've been reading rooms since I was 14. It's not a skill I chose. She looked at him steadily. You own this building. Several of them. You were bleeding in the alley, behind one of your own buildings last night. Yes. And you let me tear up my uniform. You didn't ask permission. You could have told me who you were. You didn't ask. 1 degree of movement in his face, that window again. You also didn't leave. I've bled in harder places than that alley. Nobody stayed. Something in her chest did something she didn't have language for. She kept her arms crossed. I'm not most people. I know, he said. That's why we're having this conversation. He turned back to Harmon. The window closed, everything closed. Her badge. Sir, there's still an open. Badge, now. Harmon's hand went to his pocket. He held it out. He didn't look at her. She took it, looked at it. The worn edge of the clip, 4 years of putting it on and taking it off. She clipped it back to her collar. Then she looked at Harmon. He found something very interesting to look at on the floor. My security team will be pulling all footage from last night, Jun Woo said. The lounge, the cart bay, the service corridor, every frame. Mr. Kang, I can assure. I'm going to need your personal access logs, every floor you visited after midnight, every door you opened. The blood left Harmon's face, not all at once, steadily, like water finding its way out. I didn't. My team will find out what you did. He held the look as long as it needed to be held. Then he turned to HR with the complete economy of a man who has extracted everything useful from a moment. Ms. Amara is on full paid administrative leave pending review, full salary, full benefits, active employee status at all times. Yes, sir. That document, a glance at the folder, shred it. The HR woman turned and walked toward the stairwell like the folder was on fire. Queens tapped that like button right now, not for the channel, for Amara, because she stood in that lobby with her badge taken in front of colleagues who looked away, and she did not fold. She did not beg. She told the truth and she held her ground and she made a man who had planned this whole thing look at the floor. If you have ever been set up by someone who smiled at you every day, who knew your schedule and your habits and used that knowledge against you, you know exactly what this moment costs. Now I need to know, if you were Amara, would you take this job back? Or would you walk out of that building today and never return? Comment right now. Because what she decides next changes everything, and I want to know where you stand before she makes it. Like this video, subscribe so you don't lose this channel, and tell me what you would do. The lobby returned to normal the way rooms return to normal after something irreversible, not really normal, just a performance of it. The staff near the elevator got in without looking at each other. The guards went back to the desk. The HR woman disappeared. Harmon stood near the security desk with no folder and no purpose. Jun Woo spoke quietly to one of his men. Then he walked to Amara. He stopped beside her, not in front, beside. The distinction felt deliberate. They looked out the lobby window at the street. Your daughter, he said. She glanced at him. 7. She's in school. Yes. You work nights, so you can be home when she gets back. It wasn't a question. She looked at him properly. You worked that out from. Day shift would have you leaving before she comes home. Night shift means you're there for pickup and dinner and then you come here. He said it with no particular expression, just fact. That's not guessing. That's a schedule most people don't choose unless they have a reason. She was quiet for a moment. You looked up my employment file. This morning. Why? Because you bought your own first aid kit. He said it simply, like it explained everything. The requisition for a replacement kit was submitted 11 months ago. It was sitting in Harmon's approval queue, unapproved. While you worked every night on a floor where accidents happen, with a kit you paid for yourself, because you stopped waiting for management to do what management was supposed to do. Amara stared at him. You pulled maintenance records. 11 unapproved requests across 14 floors. Lighting, equipment, a broken lock on the 31st floor service entrance that's been on that list for 7 months. The alley light, she said. He paused. That request was submitted 2 years ago by the overnight cleaning staff. We kept being told it was in process. Harmon's cue. I assume so. Jun Woo was still. The first silence from him that felt uncontrolled, like something arrived in it without his permission. Like he was sitting with the particular discomfort of a man who runs things and has just discovered a gap between what he believed he was running and what was actually happening inside it. If that light had been installed, he said, I wouldn't have used that alley. And I would have been walked out of this building this morning with no one to stop it. Yes. She let that sit between them. I don't know whether to call that irony or instruction, she said. Both, he said. It's usually both. Harmon was escorted from the building 40 minutes later by two of Jun Woo's men. He passed within 5 feet of Amara on his way to the exit. He didn't look at her. He didn't look at anyone. He kept his eyes at some middle distance that contained nothing he wanted to see. She watched him go. She didn't feel what she expected. She expected something sharp, satisfaction, or anger finally released. What she felt was tired. The specific, bone-deep tired of someone who worked all night and fought all morning and is now standing in a lobby trying to understand what to do with a victory she never agreed to fight for. Her phone buzzed. Zoe's school, parent-teacher meeting, next Thursday. She looked at the notification, then looked up. Jun Woo was watching her. Go home, he said. I don't sleep during the day. Today you should make an exception. You can't tell me when to sleep. I'm suggesting. You suggest like you're issuing orders. It's been pointed out before. No apology, no adjustment, just the plain fact of it. 2 days for the review, we have 6 weeks of footage. And after, I come back, I clean the floors. We pretend the CEO knows my name and the last 12 hours didn't happen. I knew your name before I was the CEO. You knew it for 12 hours. Some names take longer to matter, he said. Yours didn't. She looked at him. He looked back. She picked up her bag and walked out through the revolving door into the morning, into the city, into the noise and indifference of a street that had no idea what just happened inside that building. She didn't look back. The review took 43 hours. The footage found everything. Camera from the service corridor captured Harmon entering the cart bay at 1:17 a.m., 23 minutes after Amara returned from the alley. He walked in holding a pen. He opened her cart. He placed it inside. He closed the cart. He left. He didn't look at the camera because he believed he knew which cameras covered which zones and had planned around them. He didn't know about the secondary unit, installed 3 months ago, during a security upgrade that nobody had updated the coverage map to reflect. The pen belonged to a visiting executive, a man with financial ties to a competing holding company that had been quietly dismantling pieces of Kang International's portfolio for 8 months. The visitor had dinner at the Tower restaurant and left without his pen. Harmon had been receiving payments for 6 weeks, small enough to stay invisible, consistent enough to matter, to feed information when useful and manufacture problems when directed. He chose Amara because she had no connections, because she was quiet and hardworking and needed her job and had spent 4 years making herself indispensable without making herself visible. He chose the person he thought couldn't fight back. He chose wrong. On the morning of the 3rd day, Amara came back to the tower. Not the lobby. The 44th floor, the executive lounge. She had cleaned this room so many times she knew which panel of glass caught the morning light and which corner the vacuum missed if you weren't paying attention. She had been in this room every night for 4 years. It looked completely different when you were sitting in it. Jun Woo was at the west window. She had cleaned that glass 100 times. She knew the exact pressure to use so it didn't streak. He turned when she came in. Review is complete. I heard. You heard. The building talks. It always has. I've just been the one cleaning it, so nobody bothered to lower their voice around me. Something crossed his face. Brief, she filed it. Full reinstatement. Back pay for every day missed. A formal written apology from the organization. I don't need it in writing. I know. I'm issuing it anyway. Harmon. Terminated. Legal team is determining additional exposure. The man who paid him. Being handled. She didn't ask how. She understood there were parts of Jun Woo Kang that lived permanently in shadow, that the man who bled in that alley and told her not to call anyone meant it in ways that went beyond the obvious. She had enough sense to know where the edges of that were and enough self-preservation not to lean over them. She sat down, uninvited, without asking, in one of the executive chairs she had vacuumed around for 4 years without ever once sitting in. She felt how good the chair was for exactly 1 second. Then she looked at him. "Say what you actually came to say," she told him. "You didn't bring me to the 44th floor for things HR could have emailed." Jun Woo moved from the window. He came and sat across from her, not at the head of the table, directly across. Like this was a conversation between two people, and he wanted that fact to be architectural, not just stated. "I want to offer you a position. I don't take charity." "It's not charity. It's a role that should have existed 8 years ago and doesn't because nobody was paying attention to the right things." He held her gaze. "Facilities management advocate for overnight and support staff. Your job is to make sure requests get processed, equipment gets replaced, and what happened to your first aid kit never happens again on any floor of any building I own." She was very still. "3 times your current rate, day schedule, full benefits, your name on the organizational chart." "Why me?" she said. "Specifically, not generosity, why me?" "Because you've been doing the work for 4 years without the authority. Because you know this building better than anyone in a management position. Because you identified a gap in security lighting 2 years before I bled in it." He paused. "And because you bought a first aid kit for a building that didn't deserve your care and used it on a stranger in an alley at midnight without asking what it was going to cost you." A beat. "That kind of judgment isn't trained. I want it on my side." Amara looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at the room, at the window she'd cleaned, at the chair she was finally sitting in. "I'll think about it," she said. "That's all I'm asking." They both stood. She looked at him across the table. "You never told me who you were." "You never asked." "I'm asking now." Light moved across the room from the west window. "Jun Woo." She said it once, testing the weight of it, deciding if it fit. "Fix the light in the alley, Jun Woo." "Already submitted." "Approved." "This morning." She nodded, picked up her bag. She walked out. 3 weeks later, she was on the 44th floor. Not cleaning it. The facilities management office was 2 doors down from the executive lounge. It used to be a storage room. It had been cleared out and repainted while she was on leave. Her name was on the door. She'd printed the nameplate herself before the official one arrived, just to see how it looked. It looked right. In front of her, 47 outstanding maintenance requests pulled from Harmon's backlog. The buried things. The requests that had been submitted by people who cleaned floors and fixed boilers and worked through the night in a building where the people on the top floors didn't know their names. Submitted carefully, professionally, through the proper channels, and then quietly set aside by a man who had decided they weren't worth his time. She'd cleared 11 today. The alley light was installed on day 1. Her phone lit up. "Zoe, from home. Mom, are you still at work?" She typed back, "1 more hour." "Is your new job good?" Amara looked at the nameplate. At the list. At the west-facing window 9 blocks from the window in their apartment where her daughter stood sometimes and watched the city like she was already planning what she was going to do with it. She typed, "Yeah, baby, it's really good." Around 11 p.m., she heard the elevator. She would always know that sound, the specific tone of the executive elevator, faster than the others, quieter. She'd listened to it for 4 years from the wrong side of a cleaning cart. Footsteps in the corridor. 2 knocks at her door, deliberate, not hesitant. "Come in." Jun Woo opened the door. He took in the office, the nameplate, the desk with the list and the red pen and the thermos from home. He didn't say anything for a moment. "You're working late." "So are you." "I own the building. And I manage the facilities, which means I also work late." She didn't look up from the list. "Occupational consequence." "How many today?" 11, 36 to go. And there are more from before Harmon. I found a secondary backlog in a subfolder that I don't think anyone's opened since 2021. "How far back does it go?" "Far enough that some of these people don't work here anymore." She finally looked up. "They submitted requests, nothing happened, they left, and the problem is still here." He came further into the room, looked at the list over her shoulder without asking, not invasively, just with the attention of someone who actually wants to see what's there. The intake system, she said. It needs to be rebuilt. Right now, everything routes to one approval chain. One person can bury anything. I need requests to be logged automatically on submission, assigned within 24 hours, and escalated if they're not resolved in 2 weeks. Write it up. I already did. She slid a document across the desk. 4 pages, clean margins, clear language, the kind of document that takes longer to produce than it looks like it does. He picked it up. He read the first page, the second. He read the way he did everything, completely, like the words had earned his full attention and he wasn't going to pretend otherwise. He set it down. This is good. I know. And those 2 words from her, delivered without apology or performance, was the moment the corner of his mouth moved. Not almost, not an adjustment, an actual, real, fractional expression. It lasted 2 seconds, maybe 3. It was enough. Good night, Amara. Good night, Jun Woo. He turned and left. She listened to the elevator descend. She sat with the quiet for a moment. Then she opened request number 12. The security light in the alley came on at dusk every night now. She could see it from the service exit, that warm yellow circle on the concrete where she had knelt down next to a stranger bleeding in the dark, and decided, without an audience, without a reward, without even knowing why it mattered so much, to stay. She thought about that decision sometimes. How it cost her nothing in the moment except a torn uniform and 2 hours of sleep she didn't get. How it turned out to cost her everything by morning. Her badge, her income, her standing in a building she'd given 4 years to. How those costs were temporary and manufactured, designed by someone who had calculated she couldn't survive them. How they were wrong. The thing about Amara, the thing Harmon could never have understood because it required knowing her, and people like Harmon never bother to know people like her, was that she had never once confused her job with her identity. The badge was not who she was. The cart was not who she was. The 44th floor was not who she was. She knew exactly who she was. She was her mother's daughter. She was Zoe's mother. She was a woman who bought her own first aid kit and submitted her own maintenance requests and figured out on her own that you don't use that cleaner on that marble, and then corrected the mistake without being asked, and without being thanked, and without stopping. She was a woman who helped bleeding strangers in alleys. Not because it was going to benefit her. Not because she knew who he was. Because he was there and she was there, and she had hands and supplies, and a simple, unshakable belief she had carried since childhood and was already pressing into Zoe's hands like something precious and transferable. That decent people do the decent thing even when it costs them something. Especially when it costs them something. What Harmon hadn't understood, what people who build their power on other people's silence never understand, is that you cannot take that from a person. You can take the badge. You can plant the pen. You can print the paperwork before the conversation even happens. But you cannot reach inside a person and remove the part of them that knows who they are. Amara always knew who she was. It just took a bleeding stranger in an alley and a man who came through a lobby door at exactly the right moment for the building to finally know it too. Queens, before this ends, I need to sit here with you for a moment, because Amara made a decision in this story that I can't stop thinking about. She went back. She walked back into the building that tried to erase her, sat down in the chair she'd been vacuuming around for 4 years, and she built something. She didn't let what they did to her define where she was allowed to go next. And I need to know, could you have done that? If someone set you up, took your badge in front of people you worked beside every day, handed you a termination document they printed before they even talked to you, could you walk back in and claim that space? Or would you need to leave and never return to protect yourself? Tell me in the comments. Be honest. Because I think that question means something different for every woman who answers it, and I want to read every single response. If this story found you at the right moment, if it said something you needed to hear today, subscribe to this channel. Because every single week I bring you a story built for women who know what it costs to hold yourself together when everything is going wrong, and you are the only one who knows you're right. And if you know a woman who needs to hear that her quiet dignity is not weakness, that it is the most powerful and most dangerous thing she owns, share this with her. Not as a forward, as a gift. She'll know exactly why when it's over. Amara locked the office at 11:47. The same time, she used to finish the 44th floor. She walked past the executive lounge, past the window that faced west, past the stretch of corridor where the ventilation used to rattle before she submitted the request herself and had it fixed in 48 hours, first thing she did when she started. She took the executive elevator down. It was hers to take now. She walked through the lobby, the same tiles she counted 9 steps from the revolving door 3 weeks ago with a badge missing from her collar and guards at her elbows. She walked them differently now. Not triumphantly, she wasn't built for performance, just steadily, the way she walked into the alley that night. Chin level, eyes open, feet already decided. She pushed through the revolving door. The city was doing what it always did, moving, loud, enormous, indifferent to the specific smallness or greatness of any single person inside it. Amara walked into it anyway. She had a daughter at home who dreamed in bigger colors than this city had ever bothered to offer. A daughter who was going to grow up watching her mother walk into every room like she belonged there, because she did, because she always had, because belonging somewhere was never about who gave you permission. It was about knowing who you were when nobody was watching. Amara had always known. The rest of the world was just catching up,